Welcome back, dear friends. If you are learning English and sometimes feel stuck, nervous, or invisible because of it, this space is for you. This video is not about grammar rules or fancy words. It is about something deeper that most people never talk about. For many years, I stayed silent in rooms full of people. Not because I had nothing to say, not because I was weak or shy, but because English controlled my confidence. I had thoughts, ideas, opinions, and answers, but they stayed trapped inside me. Every time I wanted to speak, fear spoke louder than my voice. If you have ever sat in a group discussion and stayed quiet even when you knew the answer, this video is for you. If you have ever avoided speaking because you were scared people would judge your English, this video is for you. Millions of people struggle with this every single day, but they think they are alone. The truth is, you are not bad at English. You are just afraid of being wrong. And that fear slowly turns into silence. The silent struggle. For a long time, English felt like more than just a language. It felt like a test I was failing every day in front of people. Whenever I wanted to speak, my heart started racing and my thoughts became heavy. I knew what I wanted to say, but my mind kept searching for perfect words. That search made me freeze. By the time I felt ready, the moment was already gone, and I stayed silent once again. In conversations, I often felt invisible. People around me spoke confidently, laughed freely, and shared opinions without hesitation. I listened carefully, understanding almost everything, yet saying nothing. Inside my head, I was having full conversations, but my mouth refused to cooperate. I was scared that one wrong sentence would make people judge my intelligence. That fear slowly trained me to stay quiet even when I had something valuable to add. There were moments when I finally gathered courage and spoke, but those moments did not always end well. Someone corrected my grammar. Someone smiled in a way that made me feel small. Sometimes the conversation moved on before I could finish my sentence. These experiences stayed with me longer than they should have. Each one added another layer of doubt and made speaking feel more dangerous than staying silent. Over time, silence became my habit. I nodded, smiled, and agreed, even when I had different thoughts. I avoided eye contact so no one would ask me questions. I convinced myself that being quiet was safer. But deep inside, that silence was painful. It slowly stole my confidence and made me feel like I was less than others, even though the only thing holding me back was fear, not ability. When silence starts hurting, silence does not feel dangerous at first. It feels safe. It feels like protection from embarrassment and judgment. I told myself that staying quiet was a choice, that I did not need to speak to be understood. But slowly, that silence began to cost me more than I expected. I missed chances to share my ideas, to ask questions, and to show who I really was. People around me started assuming I had nothing to say, and over time, I almost believed that myself. The hardest part was watching opportunities pass by. Group discussions ended without my voice. Meetings moved forward without my input. People who spoke less confidently than me were noticed, simply because they spoke. I realized that understanding English in my head was not enough. The world only responds to the voice it can hear. Each missed moment left me with regret and the same painful thought, I could have said that. At some point, silence stopped feeling like safety and started feeling like punishment. I felt stuck between knowing and expressing, between thinking and speaking. I avoided situations where I had to talk, not because I wanted to, but because fear controlled my decisions. Even simple conversations felt exhausting. I was constantly translating in my mind, correcting myself before speaking, and judging my own voice before anyone else could. That was the moment I understood something important. Silence was not protecting me anymore. It was slowly shrinking my confidence and my identity. I was not failing at English. I was failing to give myself permission to be imperfect. And that realization, though painful, became the beginning of change. The shift that changed everything. One day, I got tired of feeling small because of a language. I realized that waiting to feel confident was keeping me stuck. Confidence was not going to come first. Action had to come first. That thought changed how I looked at English and how I looked at myself. I stopped asking when I would be ready and started asking what I could do today, even if it felt uncomfortable. I made a simple decision. I would speak one sentence every day, no matter how broken it sounded. I did not focus on grammar or accent. I focused on being understood. Some days my sentences were messy. Some days I paused too much. Some days I wanted to stop mid-sentence. But I spoke anyway. And every time I spoke, something inside me felt lighter. Slowly, I noticed something surprising. People did not react the way I feared. Most of them listened. Some helped. Some did not care at all. The judgment I was afraid of existed mostly in my own head. Each small conversation gave me proof that mistakes were not the end of the world. They were simply part of the process. That was when I understood the real problem was never English. It was the pressure to be perfect. Once I let go of that pressure, my voice started coming back. I was no longer silent because I was afraid. I was speaking because I wanted to be heard. And that shift changed everything. Finding your voice again. When I finally stopped chasing perfect English, I noticed a quiet change happening inside me. I was no longer preparing sentences in my head before conversations even began. I started focusing on the person in front of me instead of the mistakes I might make. That shift made conversations feel real again. I was no longer acting or performing. I was simply participating. Even when my words were simple, they felt honest, and honesty made them powerful. The fear did not disappear overnight. Some days my voice still shook. Some days I paused too long or repeated myself. But the difference was that I did not stop anymore. I continued speaking even when it felt uncomfortable. Each time I did that, I proved to myself that fear could exist without controlling me. Slowly, those uncomfortable moments became familiar, and familiarity turned into confidence. I began to understand that fluency is not about speed or accent. It is about comfort. Comfort comes only when you allow yourself to be seen as you are. Every small conversation became practice. Every mistake became feedback, not failure. I stopped replaying my sentences in my head after speaking. I stopped punishing myself for sounding imperfect. Instead, I reminded myself that progress sounds messy before it sounds smooth. As weeks passed, the way people responded to me started to change. Not because my English suddenly became advanced, but because my energy changed. I looked people in the eye. I spoke without apologizing for my words. I stayed in conversations instead of escaping them. People listen differently when you believe in your own voice. Confidence, even quiet confidence, is something others can feel. The biggest transformation was internal. I stopped measuring my worth through a language. English became a tool, not a judge. I no longer felt smaller in rooms full of fluent speakers. I felt equal, present, and valid. Speaking imperfect English gave me something silence never did. It gave me courage, self-respect, and the belief that my voice deserves space in this world. One simple truth. English has never been the enemy. The real enemy is the fear that convinces you to stay quiet even when your mind is full of thoughts. That fear grows every time you choose silence over expression. It makes you believe that mistakes are dangerous and that being judged is worse than being invisible. Over time, this fear feels normal, but it is quietly controlling your confidence and your choices. Confidence is not a reward you get after becoming fluent. It is something you build while struggling, while pausing, and while making mistakes. Every time you speak despite fear, you train your brain to feel safe in your own voice. Fluency is not about sounding perfect. It is about feeling comfortable enough to continue speaking even when you are unsure. You do not need perfect grammar, a neutral accent, or advanced vocabulary to begin. You only need the courage to speak one sentence today. That single sentence can break the cycle of silence and remind you that your voice has value. Growth starts small, but it always starts with action. If English has ever made you feel small, invisible, or unconfident, I want you to know something important. Your silence does not mean you are weak. It means you have been afraid of being judged. But your voice matters, even when it shakes, even when it makes mistakes. Do not wait for perfect English to start speaking. Start speaking to build perfect confidence. If this story feels like your story, stay with this channel. Subscribe and be part of a space where learning English is about expression, not perfection. Like this video so it reaches someone who is still silent. Comment one word today, just one, to prove to yourself that your voice deserves to be heard. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.